Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going deep on this fascinating area of AI research, offline reinforcement learning.
It's a hot topic right now, lots of buzz.
Yeah. And specifically, we're looking at this new method that's generating, well, quite a bit of excitement.
Flocky learning.
That's the
Yeah.
one, FQL. So, for anyone just joining us, offline RL is all about getting an AI to make good choices, good decisions, but using data that's already out there. No need for real-time interaction or feedback.
Right. Imagine training a robot, say, to sort your recycling, but it just learns by watching, I don't know, a ton of YouTube videos of people doing it.
Exactly. So huge potential, right? But it can't be as easy as just throwing data at an AI and hoping for the best.
No, no, definitely not. The AI is, in a way, limited by what it sees in that data. Think of it like if you wanted to learn to cook and you only ever watched amateur cooks online.
Okay, yeah. You'd pick up some techniques, but you might miss those subtle things that really make a dish sing.
Precisely. The AI can only learn as much as the data allows. It's got these ingredients, but maybe not the whole recipe.
Right, so how do we make sure the AI, even with that limited data, learns the absolute best way to do something, the best recipe for action, so to speak?
This is where we get into this idea of behavioral distribution. It's basically describing how varied, how complex the actions are within that data set.
Yeah.
The data is all over the place. It's harder for the AI to figure out a good policy.
Policy being, sorry.
Yeah, it's just a fancy way of saying a strategy for taking actions, a set of rules to follow, essentially.
Okay, got it. So messy data, tough problem. And this is where FQL comes in, promising to be a bit of a game changer. Yeah.
That's what the paper claims, at least.
And they're using this interesting technique, flow matching, which is, how would you explain that?
Well, think about water flowing around obstacles. It naturally finds the most efficient path.
Goes with the flow, literally.
Exactly. FQL does something similar with actions. It figures out, based on the data, the most likely sequences of actions. What makes sense, given what it's seen.
Okay, so it's like it's mapping out all the possible moves based on the data it has.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But here's the key difference with FQL. It doesn't make the flow model also directly responsible for maximizing reward.
Now, hold on. Wouldn't you want the AI to learn the actions that lead to the best outcome, the most reward?
You'd think so, but it turns out when you tie the flow model to the reward like that, directly, it can cause problems. It creates a sort of unstable feedback loop.
Ah, okay, so the AI gets too focused on immediate rewards, maybe.
Right. It might miss out on exploring other options that could lead to even better outcomes down the line. It's like being so focused on picking the low-hanging fruit that you never actually climb the tree to see what else is up there.
I like that analogy. So FQL avoids that trap, and that's where the one-step guidance thing comes in. This is what's unique.
This is the core innovation. FQL actually trains two policies. One is the flow policy, and its job is to just be really good at mimicking the data. All the subtleties, the variations, it captures all that.
Okay, like a master imitator.
Exactly. But then there's a second policy, much simpler, called the one-step policy. And this one focuses on maximizing reward. But it's guided subtly by the flow policy.
So it's got the freedom to go for those rewards, but within the realm of what's actually reasonable based on the data. It's like, okay, I need to give our listeners a visual here. What's a good analogy?
Okay. Imagine the flow policy is like a really detailed map of a forest. All the trails, all the paths, everything's marked. Then the one-step policy is like a hiker who wants to find the best view, the highest point. The map helps them stay on track, not get lost, but they still have the freedom to choose which path they take to get there.
I love that. So the flow policy keeps the AI grounded in what's likely, but the one-step policy gets to be a bit more adventurous within those bounds.
Yeah.
And what I really like is this means the one-step policy is what's actually used to make decisions, so no slow calculations needed when it's time to act. It's ready to go.
Exactly. And this is where things get, well, a bit more technical, but it's really clever how they've done it. The paper points out this connection between that guidance we talked about and something called the Wasserstein distance. It's basically a way to measure how different two sets of data are.
Math is not my forte, but I'm following so far. How does this distance relate to FQL?
Well, FQL uses this distance to make sure the one-step policy doesn't stray too far from what's in the data. But, and this is key, it doesn't just look at the differences between actions in a purely abstract way. It understands the context, the meaning of those actions.
Oh, I see. Give me an example.
So think about a robot arm. Moving it a couple inches to the left is a very different action from swinging it wildly around, right? Even if the distance traveled might be similar.
Yeah, one's precise, one's chaotic.
Exactly. FQL gets that nuance. Other methods might not.
So it's not just mimicking, it's understanding. That's impressive.
Mm,
Okay, but does it actually work? Does FQL outperform other methods?
That's what we're going to find out. They tested it on, get this, 73 different tasks, navigating mazes, manipulating objects, even using images as input. Really put it through its paces.
73 tasks. Okay, that's a thorough test. So
Mm.
how did it stack up?
We'll dive into the results when we come back after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Okay, so before the break, we were teasing all these tests they put FQL through. 73 tasks.
Yeah.
Like, how did they even come up with that many ways to challenge an AI?
Well, they use this benchmark called OG Bench, and it's specifically designed to be, well, a bit tricky. It's not just like, here's some perfect data, go learn from it.
Right, it's got to be more realistic than that.
Exactly. The data sets in OG Bench are meant to be a bit messy, a bit suboptimal, like you would find in the real world. So it really forces the AI to, think on its feet a bit.
Okay, so tough challenges, not so perfect data. Drum roll, please. How did FQL do?
It pretty much crushed it. Like across the board, it outperformed the baseline methods they compared it to.
That's awesome. Were there any tasks where it really stood out?
Yeah, particularly those complex manipulation tasks, like where the AI had to control a robot arm to solve a puzzle or something. Those require a lot of precision, a lot of nuance in the movements.
And that's where that flow policy really shines, right? All those subtle variations in the data, FQL has a handle on that.
Exactly. It was able to find really effective policies really quickly, even when the data wasn't ideal.
Okay, so it's not just winning, it's winning by a landslide.
Yeah.
But were there any areas where FQL, struggled a bit? Any limitations the researchers pointed out?
Well, to be fair, there were a few cases where it wasn't the absolute top performer. Like if a task required a lot of exploration, venturing into totally uncharted territory, trying things that weren't in the data at all, FQL could be a little slower on the uptake.
So like, if the data only showed people driving on paved roads, FQL might be a bit hesitant to try driving on a dirt road.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. But even then, remember, FQL can be fine-tuned with real-world experience. So it might be a bit cautious at first, but once it gets some actual practice, it learns quickly.
Ah, okay. So it's like giving that self-driving car a few test runs on the dirt roads, under supervision, of course. Once it gets a feel for it, it can combine that real-world experience with all that knowledge from the offline data.
Exactly. It's about leveraging both offline and online learning strategically.
Right. It's not an either-or situation. You get the best of both worlds. Now, one of the things that really struck me about FQL is how simple it is, especially in a field that can get pretty complex.
Yeah, it's surprisingly elegant for how well it performs.
So what makes it so user-friendly?
Well, for one thing, it doesn't require a lot of hand-holding. Like, in many reinforcement learning methods, you have to define this really complex schedule for how the AI explores its options, how much freedom it has to try new things versus sticking to what it knows.
So that whole exploration versus exploitation dilemma, right?
Exactly. Too much freedom, and the AI might just go off the rails. Too little, and it never really learns to be creative. FQL kind of simplifies all that. It uses the flow policy to, in a way, guide the AI's actions, keep it within the bounds of what makes sense, while still allowing for some exploration.
So it's striking that balance again. Offline and online learning, exploration and exploitation FQL seems to be all about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, it's really good at threading that needle. And that brings us to another interesting aspect of FQL, its efficiency. Remember how we talked about it using that separate one-step policy for actually making decisions?
Yes, and that seemed like a really smart move, especially for real-time applications where speed is crucial.
Well, it turns out that not only makes it fast, but also makes it remarkably computationally efficient. Like, it doesn't require a ton of number crunching for every single decision.
So it's not just making the right choices, it's making them quickly and efficiently. That's huge. Now, the paper mentions that FQL is actually faster than a lot of other flow-based methods out there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what they found, both in terms of the initial training time and then also in how quickly it can make decisions in real time. It's really a testament to the design, how well thought out it is.
Okay, before we move on, I just want to address something that our listeners might be wondering. We've been talking a lot about how flow matching is this key ingredient in FQL. But are flow policies inherently better than other types of policies? Like diffusion policies are another popular approach.
That's a great question. And honestly, it's something researchers are still actively exploring. But I think it's important to note that the main contribution of this FQL paper isn't really about saying flow matching is the best or anything like that. It's about introducing this new way of training policers, this one-step guidance mechanism, which could potentially be applied to different types of policies.
So it's not about picking a winner. It's about having a diverse toolkit and finding the right tool for the job.
Exactly. The authors themselves acknowledge that this one-step guidance could potentially work with diffusion policies too. They focused on flow matching for this paper because it tends to be simpler, faster to implement. But they're not claiming it's inherently superior.
That's a good reminder that AI research is all about pushing the boundaries, trying new things.
Absolutely. And while they don't make any grand claims about flow matching versus diffusion or anything, they do highlight one key advantage of flow policies in general, their simplicity.
Hmm.
And in a field that can get, bogged down in technical details, that's a big plus.
Especially for those of us who maybe don't have a PhD in machine learning, but still want to understand and use these tools.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm a developer or researcher who's really intrigued by FQL, what are the key takeaways?
Well, first and foremost, FQL is this novel approach to offline reinforcement learning that uses this really expressive flow policy to model complex actions. And it leverages this clever one-step guidance mechanism to train a policy that is both effective and efficient.
And it's designed to be practical. Like
Huh.
it's not some crazy complicated algorithm that only a handful of people can understand.
Right. It's relatively easy to implement, doesn't have a ton of parameters to tweak, and it offers this really promising avenue for training AI agents on, the kind of massive, messy data sets that we actually encounter in the real world.
This has been a really insightful deep dive so far. We've really unpacked FQL, its strengths, its limitations, its potential. But as with any powerful technology, there are always those bigger picture questions to consider.
That's true. As AI gets more sophisticated, more integrated into our life, it's crucial to think about its impact on society as a whole.
Exactly. So for the final part of our deep dive, we're going to step back a bit from the technical details and explore some of those broader implications of FQL, where this might all be leading us.
It should be an interesting conversation.
Stay with us. And we're back. We've spent the last two segments digging deep into flow queue learning, all the technical bits and pieces. But now I kind of want to zoom out a little, look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's always good to step back and think about, okay, where could this lead us? What are the implications?
Exactly. So let's shift gears a bit. We've touched on robotics, but imagine FQL being used in, like, healthcare or
Yeah.
finance, even creative fields like music or art.
It's exciting to think about, right? I mean, AI designing new drugs based on huge data sets of medical research, composing symphonies.
Giving AI the keys to the library of human knowledge and just saying, yeah, go, explore, make some discoveries.
Huh. In a way, yeah. But of course, we have to remember, AI is a tool. It's powerful, it can be incredibly beneficial, but it's up to us, ultimately, how it's used.
Right, right. It's easy to get swept up in the hype, but there are always, two sides to the coin.
Absolutely. As these AI systems get more autonomous, more capable of making decisions on their own, it raises all sorts of questions about, well, accountability.
Like if an AI makes a choice that has negative consequences, who's responsible?
Exactly. It's not a simple answer. And these are the kinds of dilemmas I think we need to be thinking about now before AI becomes so deeply embedded in our lives that, we don't have much choice but to deal with the fallout.
That's a good point. And it's not just a conversation for AI experts to have, right? This needs to be a societal discussion.
Definitely. We need to be thinking about the kind of future we want to build with AI, what role we want it to play.
And FQL, with its ability to learn from, real-world data, makes these questions even more important, I think, because the data we feed these systems will shape the choices they make, the impact they have.
It's true. It's not enough to just develop powerful AI. We need to develop AI that, in a way, reflects our values, our ethics, our hopes for the future.
So it's not just about AI, it's about us. It's about humanity.
Exactly. Making sure AI serves humanity, not the other way around.
Well said. Well, this has been quite the deep dive. We started out exploring all the technical details of FQL, how it works, its potential, and then we zoomed out, started thinking about these bigger questions, the societal impact.
It's been a really engaging conversation. And I hope our listeners are walking away with, not just a better understanding of FQL, but also a sense of wonder, but also a healthy dose of critical thinking about this whole field of AI.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into flow queue learning. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions. Because the future of AI is being shaped right now, and we all have a part to play in making sure it's a future we can all be proud of.